Marvel's Silver Age gave us icons like Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the Avengers. But alongside the icons came the misfires characters created in a rush, chasing fads, filling pages, and vanishing almost instantly. Each was introduced with big ambitions meant to lead their own series, redefine Marvel's future, or rival the heroes we now call icons. But none of them lasted. Readers ignored them, and they disappeared into obscurity. So which Silver Age characters were created to be the next big thing? These are 10 Marvel characters who were supposed to matter, but flopped. At number 10, Wonderman. Wonderman, Simon Williams, debuted in the Avengers issue 9 in October 1964. Created by Stan Lee and Don Heck, with layouts by Jack Kirby, he was introduced with great fanfare as a powerful new figure meant to rival even Thor. In his first and only Silver Age appearance, Simon was coerced by Baron Zemo into infiltrating the Avengers, but ultimately sacrificed himself to save them, dying a hero in the very same issue. The emotional arc left readers intrigued and frustrated, expecting a major new Avenger only to lose him immediately. Behind the scenes, Marvel faced pressure from DC, who claimed Wonder Man was too close to Wonder Woman, forcing Stan Lee to shelve the character rather than risk a dispute. For over a decade, Wonder Man stayed dead. He was eventually revived in 1975. His earlier story tied into the Vision's origin, but during the Silver Age, he existed only as a one-issue experiment that was quickly shelved. At number 9, Black Knight. Dane Whitman, the new Black Knight, debuted in the Avengers issue 47-48 in December 1967. Created by Roy Thomas with art by John Buscema and George Tuska, he was introduced as the noble heir of a villainous predecessor. Rejecting evil, Dane wielded the mystical ebony blade and rode the winged horse Aragorn, blending Arthurian legend with modern superheroics. Marvel initially positioned him as a major new hero. He aided the Avengers in his debut and soon received a solo feature in Marvel Superheroes issue 17 in November 1968 to expand his backstory. By 1969, he was even offered an Avengers membership, suggesting plans for a larger role. Despite this push, Black Knight failed to gain momentum in the Silver Age. His medieval theme clashed with the high-tech tone of the Avengers, and fan reception was lukewarm. He was sidelined and stranded in another time period, fading into obscurity until a later revival brought him recognition. At number 8, Khazar. Khazar, also known as Kevin Plunder, debuted in the X-Men issue 10 in March 1965. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, he was a revival of a Golden Age jungle hero living in the prehistoric Savage Land with his saber-toothed tiger Zabu. Marvel treated his debut as a notable event, featuring him prominently in X-Men and bringing him back for further appearances to build his presence. In 1969, Khazar was given a solo feature in Marvel Superheroes issue 19 as a pilot for an ongoing title. However, it failed to gain enough traction. He was then placed in the split book Astonishing Tales in 1970, but his half struggled to maintain strong readership. Khazar failed to reach A-list status because his straightforward Lord of the Jungle adventures lacked the complex villains, super science, and modern drama that made other Marvel heroes stand out. His stories seemed outdated compared to Bold, leading him to become a supporting figure rather than a headline star. Next up, Marvel's Cold War Gamble, a Native American hero meant to lead his own series, and a hypnotist who fooled even the Fantastic Four. At number 7, Yellow Claw and Jimmy Woo. Yellow Claw and Jimmy Woo debuted in Yellow Claw issue 1 in October 1956, created by Al Feldstein and Joe Maneely. The series followed FBI agent Jimmy Woo as he battled the Yellow Claw, a criminal mastermind modeled after pulp-era villains like Fu Manchu. Marvel's predecessor, Atlas Comics, launched the title as a standalone book, hoping to create a successful spy thriller franchise during the Cold War era. Jimmy Woo was notable for being portrayed as a capable Chinese-American hero, a rarity at the time. Despite the unique premise, the comic sold poorly and featured racial stereotypical tropes, typical of its era. No matter the intent, it lacked broader resonance. Yellow Claw lasted only 4 issues before cancellation in 1957, disappearing without leaving a mark on readers. Decades later, Jimmy Woo became a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and led the Agents of Atlas. But his original series was an early Marvel experiment that failed. At number 6, Redwolf. Redwolf debuted in Avengers issue 80 in September 1970, created by Roy Thomas and John Buscema. He was Marvel's first Native American costumed hero, initially introduced as Johnny Wakely, a 19th century Plains tribesman empowered by the spirit Data. Soon after, Marvel shifted focus to a modern incarnation, William Talltrees, who fought alongside the Avengers. Hoping to establish him as a major new hero, Marvel gave Redwolf solo stories in Marvel Spotlight issue 1-2 and launched a self-titled series in 1972. The book began with the Western-era Wakely version, but struggled to attract readers. By issue 7, Marvel switched the series to the modern Talltrees version in an attempt to revive sales. The change failed to save the title, and it was canceled after 9 issues in 1973. Critics pointed to inconsistent storytelling and confusion caused by multiple versions of the character. Despite Marvel's push and cultural significance, Redwolf's debut series ended quietly. At number 5, Miracle Man. Miracle Man debuted in Fantastic Four, issue 3 in March 1962, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. He was introduced as the Fantastic Four's next major villain after the Mole Man. The cover promoted him as a mysterious new foe, powerful enough to defeat Marvel's emerging superhero team. In the story, Miracle Man appeared to possess vast magical powers. He grew to giant size, easily overpowered the Thing and Human Torch, and seemed unstoppable. But his threat unraveled when it was revealed his so-called miracles were nothing more than hypnosis and clever illusions. Once exposed as a magician with no real powers, he was quickly defeated by the Fantastic Four. The character lost all credibility after this revelation, and readers were left underwhelmed. Stan Lee abandoned Miracle Man after that single appearance, and he would not return until decades later for a minor cameo. A villain introduced with great hype vanished just as quickly. At number 4, Asbestos Man. Asbestos Man, Orson Karloff, debuted in Strange Tales issue 111 in August 1963. Created by Stan Lee, Ernest Hart, and Dick Ayers, he was introduced as a brilliant analytical chemist who turned to crime. Karloff created a special asbestos-lined suit and shield that rendered him completely immune to the Human Torch's flames. In his first appearance, he used this super asbestos armor to defeat Johnny Storm and publicly humiliate him, making it appear he would become a recurring threat. Despite the strong introduction, Asbestos Man never caught on. Readers found the concept odd even in 1963, and Marvel dropped the character after this single issue. By the 1970s, asbestos was widely known to cause cancer, making the character's gimmick outdated and unintentionally grim. Years later, Marvel revisited him briefly, revealing that prolonged exposure to his asbestos suit left him terminally ill and reliant on an oxygen tank. With only one Silver Age appearance, Asbestos Man was quickly forgotten. Our final 3 were all hyped as game changers: a masked pilot meant to soar, Marvel's original master of mysticism, and a bullfighter so bad, even Stan Lee gave up. At number 3, Phantom Eagle. Phantom Eagle, Carl Kaufman, debuted in Marvel Superheroes number 16 in September 1968. Created by Gary Friedrich and Herb Trimpe, he was a World War I flying ace who donned a masked costume and piloted a biplane to battle German forces in 1917. Marvel promoted the story as a bold, pulp-inspired adventure, showcasing Trimpe's detailed aviation artwork and a full-length tryout feature. Despite the strong presentation, Phantom Eagle failed to move beyond his debut. The concept of a costumed pilot in a historical war setting felt out of place for readers drawn to contemporary superheroes and cosmic adventures. Without a connection to the modern Marvel universe, interest faded quickly. Marvel gave Phantom Eagle no ongoing series or follow-up in that era, and the character disappeared after his single appearance. He returned only years later for brief guest spots and nostalgia cameos. Introduced with promise, Phantom Eagle's journey ended almost immediately, grounded before it ever truly left the runway. At number 2, Dr. Droom. Dr. Droom, later known as Dr. Druid, debuted in Amazing Adventures issue 1 in June 1961. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Anthony Droom was a Western scientist who traveled to Tibet, trained under a lama, and gained mystical powers. His appearance was even altered magically to resemble an Asian mystic. Marvel clearly hoped to create an ongoing Master of the Occult, giving Droom a continuing feature across Amazing Adventures issues 1-4 and issue 6. However, the character quickly faltered. His stories became formulaic and strayed from true mysticism, often pitting him against aliens and simple hypnosis-based plots instead of rich magical adventures. Readers found him underwhelming compared to other rising Marvel heroes. By mid-1962, Amazing Adventures was retitled, and Dr. Droom was quietly retired after only 5 stories. He wouldn't return for over a decade, becoming Dr. Druid to avoid confusion with Dr. Doom, as a mystical hero faded into obscurity until Doctor Strange was perfected. At number 1, the Matador. The Matador, Manuel Eleganto, first appeared in Daredevil number 5 in December 1964. Created by Stan Lee and Wallace Wood, he was a disgraced Spanish bullfighter who reinvented himself as a masked criminal. Marvel positioned him as a dramatic new threat, even giving him a prominent cover appearance and hyping him as a major addition to Daredevil's Rogues Gallery. His fighting style mirrored bullfighting techniques, using a red cape to distract and outmaneuver opponents. But the lack of real powers or meaningful menace made the character fall flat. Fans quickly dismissed him as one of Daredevil's weakest foes, and even Stan Lee abandoned the character after his debut. The Matador resurfaced briefly years later, only to be swiftly defeated and mocked again. The Matador, despite his colorful costume and unique origin, serves as a cautionary tale of overhyped Silver Age villains, remembered mainly as a failed experiment who never fulfilled the promise of his debut. Like deep comic dives, hit the like, subscribe button, and press the bell icon for regular updates.